It's Bobby Hughes with Point Firearms, and today, back down here in the shop, I'm going to bring you a little video on the Marlin. This is a Glenfield Model 60. All right, it's the model number is actually a Model 60. It's made by Marlin, and it is but labeled, stamped in here. It says Glenfield. Good little 22 long rifle, semi-automatic or repeating arm. It's a pretty nice little rifle. This is actually a customer brought it to me, had it for years. I don't know where he got it from or whatever, but you can tell it's kind of been neglected a little bit. It's got some surface rust on the outside of the barrel here in the bluing. Nothing real serious, I don't think, that's going to interfere with the bluing. Just a little bit of spot rust on there, and basically just needs to be cleaned up. He said it had some problems with the feeding and the ejection, and I ran about 15 rounds through it a little while ago, and it seemed to do just fine for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up real good, get this rust off the barrel, and just break it down, field strip it down, and clean this the bolt and the firing pin and all that stuff up. Maybe even do a little bit of buffing on the stock here. It's got some grime on it and everything, so not a whole lot we're going to do to it. Mostly just came in, like I said, for a cleanup, and then it's missing the front sight post here, so we'll go ahead and get one of those on order and get that fixed up for him. Like I said, not a really in-depth job like most of my stuff is, but this would be a quick little project, and just want to show you guys the field strip on it. So how to break it down for cleaning and reassemble it. So hopefully you guys get some use out of it. If you have a little Marlin 22 and you've never taken it apart to actually clean it, other than just holding it back and trying to shove a brush down in there or whatever. So we'll go ahead and get it disassembled and show you guys how to do it. Alright guys, so the first thing you need to do with the rifle, as always, I'm not going to talk to you like you're idiots, but make sure that you open the bolt up here. Alright, make sure there's nothing in the chamber, and you also want to pull the magazine guide tube out and make sure that there's no rounds actually in the gun. Alright, so we'll go ahead and remove the guide tube here and set that off to the side, and you actually need to remove that to disassemble it anyway, so it's a good way to check and make sure it's clear, and also go ahead and take that out in that step for cleaning. Anyway, so our weapon's clear. What we want to start with is, first thing I'm going to do is flip it around this way. It makes it easier to work on. Alright, so bear with me on the camera angle here. I'm going to try to help you out best I can. Alright, so you have your takedown screw, which is right here, and you're going to need to remove that, and you're also going to remove the back screw behind the trigger frame here. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is, as always, make sure that you use a properly fitted screwdriver. Alright, we're going to remove our takedown screw here and set that aside, and then we're going to also go ahead and remove the rear, I'm going to call it the tang screw, but it is actually would be the tang screw, but it's the screw behind on the back side of the trigger frame. Alright, now for this part you don't actually have to take this screw out in the front of the trigger frame. That actually just removes the trigger frame from the stock itself. Once you get both of those screws out, you're just going to pull the stock, separate the stock from the action in the barrel, and if you want to take the trigger frame off and clean it up, then away from the wood with some solvent or something, then you just want to remove that front trigger frame screw right there, and it's got a little kind of like a nut washer combo on the underneath side here, and that's going to come loose as well, and that will remove your trigger frame. So I'm going to go ahead and set the stock out of the way here. Alright, now we get into the action and the barrel. Alright, so for some models, I know you are going to be able to find some models that have like thumb screws here that you can just loosen up with your hands. Some you can't. Alright, you have two sets of screws that are going to be taken out. You have the back screws and you have the front screws. Alright, first one we're going to do is take out the back screws. the back screws are double jointed with a spacer. Alright, so you can usually just loosen up one of them and both of them will come loose while you hold pressure on the far one, and both of them will pop out of there. Alright, if you get your thumb under there and just pop that out, hold some pressure on it because it's just spring loaded, just in case it comes loose. Set those aside, and then you're going to remove your front two screws here, and they're not joined with a spacer. They're actually both threaded, and they're different, so make sure that you keep them separated. Alright, what I like to do is set whatever one comes on this side closest to me, whichever one goes on the back side, I set it away from me. That way I don't get them mixed up. Alright, you see when I loosen that up, that action just popped up there. Alright, so we're just going to remove our action, remove that screw, and remove the action just by sliding back and up. Alright, now our action is separated from our actual frame and our bolt. Now I wouldn't recommend taking any of this apart. Alright, if you're just taking it apart to clean it. You can clean this, however. Take a brush and some solvent and clean it up. This one you can tell hasn't been cleaned. This is going to be your feed ramp and feeder assembly here. Alright, your ejector and all that good stuff. So you want to make sure that all that's nice and clean. And then that's where your actual feed tube feeds the round up to there. Alright, so it sets down inside of there, and that's where your round actually slides in there, right in the base here. Alright, and then this push down, the round will slide in, and then this will lift it up, and then as it runs back forward, it'll feed the as the bolt runs back forward, it'll feed it into the chamber. Alright, so you want to make sure and clean that up real well. Probably put a little bit of polish on that, help feed it a little bit better, because like I said, had some problems feeding. I didn't have any problems with it, but after it heats up, that carbon gets sticky, and that may be what it is. So set that aside and we'll clean that later. Alright, now we're at the part where we're going to take the bolt and the return spring, and in order to get the bolt out, you have to pull the charging handle off. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull the charging handle back to let the bolt come back, and I'm going to put my finger right here and I'm going to lift up on the bolt just a little bit. Alright, and if you wiggle on the charging handle and push down, it'll come out. Alright, it actually rides up between the frame and the top of the bolt. Set that aside, and then our bolt is going to come right out just like this. And you want to be real careful not to let it spring forward on you, and also you want to be easy not to bend your spring, kink your spring up. Alright, so just pull it right out, and then there's a little groove that the spring actually sets in. Alright, and then the spring will just pull right out of the base here. Alright, and then from there, that's probably about all that you need to disassemble for just basic cleaning. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. You know, of course you've got your keepers here, and both of those the springs look really good in. They're dirty, so once again that could be part of it. And then your firing pin is this little mechanism right here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it's just a little piece of steel that runs right along there, and when it pushes back here, actually pushes it forward, that's what sets your round off. Alright, so anyway, that's the basic disassembly. Now that's going to leave you with your barrel frame and your magazine tube still intact. Everything looks pretty kosher, other than the fact there's a little bit of rust on it. Now for normal cleaning, that's about all I would do. In this case, because of the rust on the barrel, I'm going to clean the barrel up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and remove the magazine tube. Basically all you have to do to remove the magazine tube is there's a little pin up here in the tube hanger, in the front of the tube hanger here. You're just going to push that pin out. Be real careful because it's real small. Push that pin out and your magazine tube will slide right through the mag hanger, right out of the gun. Alright, so anyway guys, that is the disassembly. I'm going to go ahead and get it cleaned up now, and then I'll bring you guys back for the reassembly. Alright guys, so I've got everything cleaned up now, and we'll go ahead and start the reassembly. I've got it over here in the vise, so I don't know how good you're going to be able to see it, but it's basically just obviously reverse of the disassembly. Now, like I said, I've got everything cleaned up. Actually polished up the firing pin carrier really good here, or the bolt, whatever you want to call it. I used some, because I had a lot of rust on it, and you always want this to be pretty slick. It lets everything slide a lot smoother. You don't have to use as much oil. I'm using JB's non-embedding bore cleaning compound. Alright, that works really good on parts like this. It leaves a nice mirror slick finish on it. So I remove the firing pin. You don't necessarily have to remove the firing pin from the carrier, but I did in this case. You can just lift it up and clean under it, spray under it, whatever you want to do. That's good and clean now. And then all of our screws and small parts. There's not a lot of parts to this gun, so it makes cleaning it pretty easy. I did take the magazine tube off because the barrel had some surface rust on it, and I'll show you guys that here in a little bit. I got 99% of that surface rust off of there, and the best way to do that is to remove the magazine tube. Like I mentioned before, if you decide you want to remove the magazine tube, just pop a pin out of the mag tube hanger here, and the magazine tube will slide right out. I also cleaned it up really well and greased the inside of the magazine tube to allow the tube to slide a lot easier. Alright, so that's done. I've got the magazine tube back on. I also removed the rear sight and cleaned the rust off of that. I've got that back on as well. And of course I ran a snake through the barrel a few times. A lot of carbon buildup in there. As far as the action goes, basically just took and scrubbed it with some all-purpose cleaner, and then I sprayed everything down with some degreaser. Alright, and what that does, it gets all the lint and fuzz from cleaning it out of there. I polished up the trigger ramp here and also the feed ramp. Alright, so that should be nice and smooth and clean now. And we'll want to put a little bit of oil on this once we reassemble, and I'll show you guys the key spots on that. Alright, so the first thing that we want to do before reassembling this is we want to put a little bit of gun oil in here. Alright, I use Hops gun oil. That's just what I've used since I've been in the military, and it seems to work. I use long tip applicator pads. Little trick with your applicator swabs or pads or Q-tips, whatever you want to call them. These here you can buy at Walgreens or whatever. They're a little pricey. But if you buy from like a medical supply company, you can buy a whole box of them, and it's a lot cheaper. And I go through a lot of those, so depending on how much you do, it would depend on how you do it. I always put the oil on the actual cotton swab and not on the gun, so that way it doesn't puddle. Alright, I'm just going to run a little bit around the throat of the barrel. Alright, and I'm going to coat the top of the inside of the frame anywhere where there's wear, because that means that's where other metals contact with each other. Alright, so that's where it rubs. So I'm going to take a little bit of oil, and anywhere where I see rub marks, that's where I'm going to lube it up at. Alright, and that should make it. Oil does a couple of different things. It makes action run smoother, and it also prevents carbon from sticking. Alright, so if you have oil in your guns are imperative to make cleaning easier and make tear down a lot easier, maintenance a lot easier, less broken parts, better functioning, and so oiling your rifles up is imperative. Alright, so like I said, anywhere where there's wear marks, I'm going to go ahead and oil it up. Doesn't take a whole lot. A nice thin even coat will work fine. Alright, now just like in disassembly, our first step in reassembly is going to be the bolt and the spring. Alright, now if you remember, the spring goes into the hole in the back of the bolt. just like that. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and take my charging handle with me, because I'm going to be placing that back in here at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and line my firing pin spring up, and you want to give it a little bit of guidance to keep from bending the spring. As a matter of fact, the easiest way to do this is run your rod up in there and then seat it, and then slide your bolt back down in here. That'll keep from kinking and bending your spring out. Alright, now while I've got it up, I'm going to go ahead and place my firing pin handle back in here. And set that in place. Alright, now, it's good action, good slide, good movement there. And then after that, this is going to be my action. Alright, so now my action is going to set back down in here. Opposite of the way we pulled it out, like I said before. Now, what you're going to want to do is actually place the front in first, and then slide the back down in. If you put the back in first, it's spring loaded and it'll catch, and you won't be able to line your screw holes up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and set my front in. Get my screw started. Not gonna tighten it down. Just gonna get it started. Alright, and then I'll go ahead and slide the back screw in. And once you get everything seated and in properly, then you go ahead and tighten your screws down. No need to really torque them down, you just want to make sure that they're snug. Alright, now our action is back in. We should be able to work the action. Everything seems to be working properly. Now we want to go ahead and oil up our action. First thing I'm going to suggest is springs. Springs always need lubricant. Once again, oil works for functioning, and it also helps keep carbon from sticking. Now with something like a 22, you're not going to get a whole lot of carbon, but it's still important to keep it oiled up. Like I said, you don't want to put a lot of oil in here, just enough to keep everything functioning smoothly. Your lifter spring, you want to definitely put some oil on that. Ejection spring, reset springs, all that stuff. Alright, so now we've got the oil on there, and let me grab the stock and we'll go ahead and put the stock back on. Alright, so I've got the stock, and you can tell it looks a little bit better now than it did when we started. Anytime somebody brings me a gun for a tune-up and a cleaning, I go ahead and give the stock a good polishing. I use in this case I didn't actually refinish this stock like I mentioned before. Normally what I do is just buff it down a little bit with some steel wool just to get the grime and the gunk off of it, and then I'll put a thin coat of finishing wax on it, polish it up, and that helps preserve the wood. It also makes it look a lot neater and a lot cleaner, and makes the customers happy. So something I started a while back, and just seems to, you know, give them a little bit of an extra surprise. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and what I did was, like I mentioned before, there's one screw that holds the trigger frame assembly, trigger and trigger frame assembly in the stock, and I took that screw out, wiped the stock down, or I'm sorry, wiped the trigger frame down. There's not a lot of action in this trigger, so it's basically one little bitty spring, and the trigger is actually dipped in some kind of chrome or something, chrome plated, nickel plated, I don't know, something, and so it prevents it from rusting. So it's really easy to clean up and wipe down. Once again, don't torque it, just make it snug back in there, and then we'll go ahead and replace the action onto the rifle itself. Alright, now we're going to slide the back of the stock right in over the tang, or the back of the action, and then just let it rest. I'm going to go ahead and loosen the vise up here, slide the rifle out a little bit, and then we will replace the tang screw first, and then the takedown screw. Alright, and then the last step in our reassembly procedure is to go ahead and reinsert the magazine tube. This magazine tube I actually took and polished up with some steel wool and oil. Alright, it's going to make the action a lot smoother as far as putting it back in the gun. Twist that into place, loosen the stock up, and it looks pretty good. Stock's a lot tighter, barrel's tighter, just needed a good cleaning and readjustment. And then sometimes what I'll do is take just a little bit of oil on my finger and rub it on the frame here. Put a little bit on the barrel. This will just prevent that surface rust from coming back. Just a really light coat, and then I'm going to wipe it right back off. What this does, it soaks into the pores on the metal and keeps it from helps prevent rust. And I'll just take my rag and wipe it right back off. Check do our functions check. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how you disassemble and reassemble an old Marlin 22 Model 60. So anyway guys, The only thing left to do on this gun is I actually placed the order. The customer wanted me to replace the front sight post, which is missing, has been missing for a long time. I just got that on order actually today, so it's not going to be in for a couple more days, probably 3 or 4 days. So I'll go ahead and case this bad boy up and wait on the front sight post to get here. Once it gets here, I'll go ahead and get that installed, get it sighted in, and put some rounds through it, and then I'll probably end up breaking it down and giving it a quick wipe down before I take it back to the customer. So anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have any comments or questions about the Marlin 60 or anything else for that matter, go ahead and post them in the comments below. And until next time, get out there, shoot some guns, be safe, and most importantly, have fun. See you guys later.